Had a long day? Join RB in the cheap seats where the beer tastes better and the games always matter.
Welcome into another special edition of the Cheap Seats. I know there's a lot of you out there that are about to get really excited when I tell you what type of show it's going to be today. Part 3 of Making a Man with head coach Tony Robichaux. Much popular demand. Coach is back. The first installment, I said, was kind of an introduction to the show. The second part was about toughness. And, Coach, this one I'm kind of calling Defeating Demons. And I usually just kind of leave it open-ended and let you take it where you want to start, but I actually want to tee this one up. I know you're a man that reads. One of my favorite things that I read whenever I was growing up was mythology. And whenever I think about defeating demons, and what I mean by demons for everyone out there is they come in different forms. People call them vices or weaknesses, temptations, inner demons. And when I think of the way you kind of defeat them or try to defeat them, it makes me think of the story about the gods and the titans. And the titans were forces that could destroy the entire world. And the gods knew they couldn't destroy them. They couldn't completely get rid of them. So instead, they banished them to an abyss. The abyss was called Tartarus. It's at the deepest bottom part of the entire world that you could possibly get. And that's what I kind of think about whenever it comes to the topic of defeating demons, is that you'll never truly kill some of those things or completely get rid of them, but you can hold them down and you can deal with them and you can bury them so far that they can never affect you or destroy your world. And again, I'm very young, and as Coach Robe was telling me before we got started, neither of us are licensed therapists, but I feel like that's the way that I've kind of approached dealing with my own weaknesses, demons, or however you would call them, is just that you'll defeat them better once you realize that it's hard to kill them. If you can just hold them down and deal with them, that's a victory in itself.
Well, you know, we talk a lot of what we talk about in these segments. Again, you're right. We are not licensed therapists, so we want to put that out there. And two, we've been broken. We've fought our own vices. So. You know, we don't want anybody to think that you went through the phone book and under P and found perfect, and this is why we're discussing this. So, no. As we tell the players, too, all the time, I attribute everything that we do in these segments back to what we try to teach our players and teach our team. And so I'm going to try to keep that always connected. But we tell them all the time that, you know, we're all born with a bad wolf and a good wolf inside of us. And you are correct. You can never kill the bad wolf. But you can starve him. And so we talk to them all the time about the bad wolf, good wolf inside of us, that we have to try to find good mentors that mentor the good wolf. We need to find, maybe it's a Christian radio station, or maybe it's the people we run with, the books we read. Try to put ourselves in the best position possible all the time to feed our good wolf, because you can starve the bad wolf, but you can't kill him. And so we want them to understand that, so that when they go out at night or when they get off the field at night, because our most dangerous times of any athlete is what happens when they go out at night. And so this is, you know, where the demons and the vices, you know, show up. And you are correct. You're not going to get rid of the bad wolf. You want to try to starve him, first of all. And then we try to get them to understand the difference between an illegitimate choice and a legitimate choice. When you make an illegitimate choice, it's going to bring you happiness on the front end and misery on the back end. But when you make a legitimate choice, it's going to be tough on the front end, but it's going to lead to happiness in the back end. And that's the difference between seeking pleasure and seeking happiness. There's a difference in the two. And so we want them to try to understand that as men, so that they will hopefully pick good mentors, because we always ask them, you know, who's your Fab Five? And we ask them to write that down on a sheet of paper, and it's not the Michigan basketball team.
Jalen Rose.
There you go. Most people know those five. But we ask, who's your Fab Five? And those are the 5 people that are mentoring you. Is it the radio station you're listening to every day? What books are you reading? Who's mentoring you? Because again, before we went on the air, you asked me about my wife saving my life in 1988. Somebody has to save us from us, and that's what we try to tell the team all the time. And so we do take time to have each one of our coaches talk about their brokenness or their past, because it's important for them to understand that they're not being led by perfect men. That would put too much pressure on them. What we want to try to prove to them is you're being led by men that have once were broken, but because we took this path, we want to try to speed up your learning curve so that maybe you don't have to suffer as long as we did when we were once broken.
And I'm glad you mentioned starving the wolf there,
Yes.
because and the one that I think of the most whenever I think of demons, vices, weaknesses, all that is just addiction in different forms, whether it's drink, drugs, gambling, women. It comes in many, many different forms.
It does.
But in that one, it's always hungry. It always wants to be fed, and it's your job to kind of keep it down. And I also like that you mentioned the wolf, because another way to kind of starve that thing is to keep your pack tight. And I've heard coaches say that in many different forms over the years, whether it's keep your circle tight, know who you trust and who you can't trust in different forms. And that's why I like that when you guys were here, you call your players the pack, and they
Yes.
refer to themselves as the pack.
Sure.
And is that kind of one of the ways that you train your players to keep those, as you said, bad things at bay, and in the darkness when they try to come out and bite you, is to keep your pack tight?
Well, we talk to them about the 13 hurdles in life that they're going to have to get over. That's part of our Motivational Mondays and our Growth of a Man series that we do with them. And it's the 13 hurdles that and there's an old saying, you can't get anybody else over a hurdle that you're not willing to jump yourself. And so this is the big teach that we have, is that so many times we want to fix other people, but we don't want to fix ourselves. And so we try to get over to them that for us to become a champion, you got to deal with you first. We need you to fix you, because you can't put bad people into an organization and expect the organization to be good. It doesn't work. And so I think the greatest companies, the greatest coaches, the greatest people out in corporate America today, they work on their people, because I think that's ultimately then your product gets better. See, baseballs for me, I don't necessarily always work on their baseball. I try to work on them, because if I can work on them, I think their baseball will get better. And so you're right. We do talk about the wolf system, the pack system, the pack of wolves. And in that we have AIT, which is attitude, approach, intensity, and toughness. If you have those 4 pillars, then you're going to become an aggressive competitor. And that's why on the bracelets they wear, it says AIT equals AC. And what that means is if I've got attitude, if I've got approach, if I've got intensity, if I've got toughness, I'm going to be an aggressive competitor. But if you lack one of those 4, you will not be an aggressive competitor. And so we try to take that teach into baseball, but then we also try to tell them we want you to wear this bracelet also in the private life when you leave the field at night, because what's your attitude in your spiritual walk? What's your approach? What's your intensity? What's your toughness? Can you get all 4 of those pillars built in that walk too, and not just baseball, so that you can be an aggressive competitor? And that's a big challenge for us with them, is we use the wolf system, we use the pack system, and then we try to branch off of it and take it deeper from just baseball into their personal lives. And that's where the good wolf and the bad wolf comes in, and getting them to understand that you have to starve it, you can't kill it. And you are right, talking about addictions. So many people out there today in our country, every addiction's at an all-time high today, and a lot of that is a medical sickness. Let's face it, I'm not no licensed doctor or anything. But on the other hand, when we try to talk to them about the addiction part of this in college while they're with us, because it's drugs and alcohol so prevalent, we try to get them to understand that usually an addiction will come back to temporary fix to a permanent solution, and this is what makes you an addict. If you have a flat tire, like I tell them all the time, going home for the Christmas break, and you put that little lifesaver tire on your car, that's not meant for you to roll on every day. That's meant to get you maybe to the next exit or the tire store. But if you roll on that every day, you're going to have to keep replacing it, and you'll be addicted to it, because it's a temporary fix to more of a permanent solution. And if you watch Biggest Loser and all of the weight shows and that, ultimately the food's what they're addicted to, but the trainer gets deeper than that. He gets to the problem, the root of the problem, and then now the addiction will go away. And so, they did a study a while back, and they came up with 90% of the addictions today, as I tell our players, they came up with two really deficiencies in those people's lives. And one of them was a spiritual deficiency. They couldn't tell you last time they'd been to church. And the second deficiency was a family deficiency. And so what our teach is in our locker room is we want to try to keep them connected spiritually, and then keep them connected to their family. Because we think if they don't stray from God and family, if that's 90% of the two indicators in addiction today, well, then let's work on those two, okay? But what are we doing in school? We're taking God out of school. We're taking prayer out of school. And we'll look at the family unit today. It's being busted so hard. So you want to know why the addiction side's at an all-time high? I think it's because we bust up God and family. And what we want to try to do in our program is to try to keep them connected, because college is the worst time to be disconnected from your spiritual chain.
And those things keep you connected to responsibility.
No doubt.
The people that you hold yourself responsible to then make you think about your actions every time you do them. And to wrap up this first segment, then we're going to get more in depth in the second one. You talked about the good wolf and the bad wolf, and just it made me think about how it's usually easier to make, I don't want to necessarily say the wrong choice, but to take that temptation, or to go down the route that maybe instead of, I had a hard day at work, instead of decompressing, maybe reading a book.
Well, it leads to
writing,
pleasure.
Yeah, going home and having a drink,
Sure.
or two, or three, hearing the ice clink in the whiskey glass. Like there's an easier way you can take, and usually just sitting there and thinking about it, that might be the harder way, but it's probably the more healthy way too. And that's just one example. But usually in your life, have you found that sometimes making the right choice is sometimes the harder choice to make?
Oh, there's no doubt. We all fight it. That's why we open up to our players and tell them about when we were once broken, because, when we once took the illegitimate choice, and thought it was going to lead to long-term happiness, and it didn't. It led to short-term pleasure, which leads to long-term misery. And so it is tough. We tell them all the time, you can come to my house tomorrow night. We can barbecue and drink a beer. I don't disrespect people that drink or don't drink or anything like that. I don't think we should walk around self-righteous, or we shouldn't walk around and judge. I'm not an attorney. I'm a coach. I don't think you can be a judge till you've been an attorney, so I don't think we should judge. But at the end of the day, what I want them to be strong enough is to try to be tougher than the drug, tougher than the alcohol, understand the difference between the illegitimate and legitimate choice, and understand, too, that at the end of the day, I don't think it's that wrong to sit around and drink a glass of wine or drink a beer. But here's my thing. I don't think we should glorify something that is temporary. And so what we try to tell them all the time is and then again, you got to understand, I'm talking to you as if I'm talking to my team right now.
Of course.
Okay? Because this is what this is about. And this series about trying to grow somebody from a boy to a man. And when we talk to them, we tell them all the time, if you smoke all the marijuana you can on Friday night, you're going to have to do it again on Saturday to get that same feeling. If you drink all the alcohol you can on Friday night, you'll have to do it again Saturday to get that same feeling. If you sleep with all the women you can tonight, you're going to have to do that again Saturday to get the same feeling. If you eat all the food you can on Friday night, you'll have to eat that again on Saturday to get the same feeling. That the good Lord didn't make any of that to be everlasting. It's all temporary. And where we get caught is what we call the big lie. We take them through one of the series that we do on Motivational Mondays is the big lie, is what we call it, and make sure that they can recognize what the lie is, that you can't do something fast and easy and with no discipline today. But that's what we're sold today. Take this, drink this, wear that, drive this, live here.
Quit smoking with hypnotism.
Oh, in 5 seconds. Drop 10 dress sizes, by drinking this juice tonight. And so we're sold on so many things that we're skewed today. We don't know the difference between pleasure and happiness, and we don't understand the difference between what's temporary and what's long term. And I tell this when I go speak at schools. If I took 11, 12, 13-year-old kid and took him to the Acadiana Mall and let him spend $10,000 on electronic equipment, he'll glorify me for the rest of his life, to all of his friends and family and everything. But yet he had a guy that died on a cross for him, and we fail to glorify him. And so I think that's the biggest challenge that you've got to get them to understand is what's the lie, what's the truth. And then it's a lot easier. I say easier. It's never easy, but the ability to make a right decision. And we tell them the story about, Cash the dog. He
Mm-hmm.
was did I tell you that already, maybe?
I
The
th-
world's richest dog. And,
Yeah, and he gets tired of chasing.
chasing the rabbit, chasing the mechanical rabbit. And so I think that's why so many people are burnt out in our country today, is because we chasing a lot of what's been told to us,
Yeah.
that if you wear this, drink this, take this, buy this, live here, you're going to be this. And I think we do that all over and over and over again, and yet we still can't become who they said we could become, because it's really temporary. And so now we've found pleasure versus happiness. And when you find pleasure, you're going to have to keep dabbling in it, because it's not going to last as long as true happiness will. And so I think the end of the day, it's finding out what the truth is, and then without discouragement, it's very hard for the devil to set up camp in your life. We tell them the story about the seesaw. You have a Christ side and a devil side. And when the Christ side's up, the devil side's down. Anxiety goes down, fear goes down, apprehension goes down. But boy, life will make that thing teeter-totter on you. And so we go through all these different phases in our life, and it's a challenge, man. I mean, like I said, I came out, I was young, I got through college, didn't get drafted. I thought I was mad. It was the end of the world for me. That's all I wanted to do. And I wasn't in a good place, man. I mean, I wasn't headed where I should have been, because I was chasing something, and I was chasing my plan. I didn't understand his plan. I wanted my plan. And then I came across somebody that set me straight, and that's why I say she saved my life in 1988, because she told me one day, maybe it's not your job to get to pro ball, maybe it's your job to get other people to pro ball. And
It's amazing what the right woman can do to a man.
Made me rethink a lot of things.
Yeah, and something I kind of identify with a little bit at this moment in my life. We're gonna step aside here, and we'll head into segment number 2. How does Tony teach his young men to be stronger than the drink, stronger than the drugs, and the other demons in their lives? Making a Man, Part 3 continues after this. Do you ever even notice that song, Tony, when you walk out to the mound? Or are you always just so in the zone that you don't even hear it?
I think you asked me that last time. I don't hear much. I do hear one guy that hollers, Robichaux, you're stupid. But, it's funny what things you do hear and what you don't hear.
Oh, welcome back in to Making a Man with Tony Robichaux here in the cheap seats. I'm your host, RB, Ryan Banowitz. That is Tony Robichaux, the head coach of the Ragin' Cajun baseball program. As we mentioned before, I'm going to bring it up again. Neither of us are perfect. I'm far from it. I've dealt with my own issues, still dealing with some on a daily basis, as we all do. And in the first bit, you told a little bit about a time you had to deal with, and the way you guys share it with your athletes to let them know, look, I'm not telling you exactly how to live your life. I'm just telling you the lessons I've learned. And one of the things that I've learned through covering your team is that for you, L doesn't mean loss. L means learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't just apply to baseball. That applies to life. In your life, have you learned more from your mess-ups and your losses and things you've done incorrectly than, I guess, the things that you've done right, where you're like, all right, I did a good job? Because usually I think I learn more from the mistakes I've made.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, we tell them all the time that big leaguers fail their way to the top. I mean, that's how you get there. But what's wrong in sometimes what's wrong in our country today is that we've created an enigma that you have to be perfect to lead, and so many people today are fearful to lead, because the minute you step out, just like this show, they'll go to digging on why are we talking about this, because we're not perfect. But that's what gives you the right to speak about it. I mean, our church is not a hall of fame for the perfect. I mean, it's a hospital for the broken. And a lot of times we get into, well, he's not perfect. Well, nobody is. And so, that's the whole challenge with our walk is being able to, get through the times we've fallen. And I've said this all the time. I tell the players all the time, when you fall down, you don't get back up extrinsically. I mean, you get back inwardly. That's how you get back up. And when you start to change from the inside out, your life's going to change. But a lot of times we look outside of ourselves to change instead of inwardly. And I think that's the biggest key. And again, I think we have to fight for self-improvement. I'm still fighting today. I mean, you are.
Me
We
too,
all
yeah.
gonna. I mean, it's you don't ever, I don't think, get there. I mean, ultimately one day maybe you will, but I think it's a constant battle on self-improvement. Like I tell the players all the time, on my way home, my truck just doesn't automatically get me home. It's willing to turn into some bad place if I'll allow it. I mean, we're not perfect. We all fight the same battle, and the key to it, I think, is again who's mentoring you, who's your 5 mentors, and because those are the people that have the power of influence over you. Like I said, Hitler was a good leader. He just led in the wrong direction, and so the power of leadership today is the power of influence. They claim that I think in your lifetime you'll influence maybe 10,000 people just on the minimum, just coming to work every day and just going to where you're going. And leadership's the power of influence. What I want to try to do, and I want to try to tell them to do and learn how to do, is when you get out in the community and when you walk and when you go places, I want you to influence somebody to the good that day. That person that you bump into that day, maybe you're the only good they're going to hear that day. I mean, you don't know what's going on in their life. You know what I'm saying? The other day I'm headed, and there's a gentleman down the street, and he's sweating and got a backpack on, and I pulled over and said, "Hey, you need a ride, man?" And he said, "Sure." So he jumps in. I said, "Where are you headed?" He said, "I'm headed to Piggly Wiggly, in Scott." I said, "Well, come on." So we're shooting the bull, and then I asked him what's going on. He said, "I lost my job in the oil industry, and I lost my vehicle." And he said, "I'm headed to the grocery store." And I don't want to act like I'm some good Samaritan. I mean, but everybody, I try to teach them. Try to do one good deed every day, because you don't know where that person is. And the biggest problem in our country today is people are so discouraged. That's when the devil sets up life or camp in your life, is when you're discouraged. And I tell them the old story about, the guy driving to the neighborhood, and the devil was coming out. He had all his bags packed, and the guy rolls his window down and says, "Hey, man, where are you headed?" He said, "I'm leaving here." He said, "There's nobody discouraged here." He said, "I can't do no work here." And that's what gets us in trouble a lot of times, is that we get discouraged, and so you want to try to keep those people's hopes up, because we are in a difficult time financially, but even when it comes back, you're still going to be in a difficult time, because when money flows, I always tell the players this, the greater the level, the greater the devil.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's going to always be here. And there's nobody perfect. But what I want them to do, one day, Coach Lotif, Stephanie, said she was walking. She had some stuff in her hands, headed to the indoor facility, and she got close to the door, and 2 of our players were walking to the indoor facility, but they were pretty far behind her. They took off running and got there, and one of them offered to take the boxes out of her hand, the other one offered to open the door. And so she says, "Boy, y'all's mom and dad have really done a good job with y'all." And they said, "Oh, no, it's Coach Robe." But you see what they're doing? I mean, they're learning to be a servant leader. They're learning to serve somebody else. They recognize a need, and they stepped up as servant leaders instead of to be served. That's our biggest problem today, is we work to be served versus to serve. And so I want them, I don't care if you're an All-American closer, I don't care if you're the Friday night starter, you can go open that door for her, or you can watch her go try to open it, and that's what I want to try to do with them, is to make sure that, what they do doesn't become who they are, because that's the problem you get in athletics, is you can be glorified from success, or glorified as a coach. I don't want to be glorified. I'd rather you go glorify the guy that died for me instead of glorifying me because I got you to a super regional to Omaha.
Yeah, we've already talked about a couple of the physical manifestations of temptation stuff, drink, drugs, things of that variety. But I think some of the more deadly ones come from within and come in the form of laziness and pride. But I want to take pride first, because that's one that I feel like you have to deal with a lot in the athletic realms, just because whether people like it or not, kids develop an ego throughout athletics, whether it's travel ball, AAU, or just being that good for so long, you start to convince yourself, I'm the man.
No doubt.
And I feel like there's part of that, and again, this is a literary reference because I like to read mythology and stuff, but hubris, where your pride becomes too much and you start to overlook your own weaknesses. And it ends up usually in tragedies and great literature, it ends up being their downfall. In heroes, it's their hubris. And is that something that I feel like that you've probably always had to deal with? Because there's been a lot of things that have changed about the generation, the temptations, video games, television, influences, all that has changed. But I feel like pride is one that has always been inside men that we've been dealing with since the beginning of time.
Well, I tell them the first day when we talked to them about this course and becoming a man is pride's a disease. I mean, and all men were born with it. And, you know, God says we can't get to any of the virtues in life until we're willing to walk through the door of humility. And so what I try to talk to them about all the time is that, you know, the reason I want to talk to you about this is because I was once there. And so, and God doesn't punish us when we get humbled because we think he did, but technically he's given us the gift that we really need because he's clear. We cannot get to any of the virtues in life until we're willing to walk through the door of humility. And so what I want them to understand is when they walk through that classroom and they walk through the locker room door, every time they walk through a door for the rest of their life, I want them to see a sign, an imaginary sign above it that says humility. Because if you want to get to any of the virtues in life, you have to be willing to walk through the door of humility. And if not, he's going to walk you through it for you. Why don't you just do it yourself? And you know, we all get to that point. And Tiger Woods said that, you know, I mean, that he got to a point where he thought he could do just whatever he wanted to do. Because, again, they start getting glorified at a very early age. I mean, it starts almost before junior high when they pick the kick the can. You know, they pick the athlete first, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what Joe Ehrman says in his book, Inside Out Coaching, The 3 Lies of a Man, is that, you know, the kid that's showing grace already, hugging already, crying already, he's pushed to the peripheral. They take the athlete. And then when you get to junior high, you can start to see the athletes running the hallways, hitting a kid over the head because maybe he's in band and you know, or 4-H and he's not a big football player, you know, and they push him out of the way of the line of the cafeteria. And Joe Ehrman's a football coach, and he doesn't allow his players to do that. They can't do that. They eat last because there's an old saying, leaders eat last. I mean, if you ever watch us walk into a place to eat with the players, I hold the door open and they all go through before I go through because you got to feed your troops, man. I can't feed me. I have to feed my troops. You have to understand what leadership is. You have to have the first boots onto the battlefield, and you're the last boots off the battlefield. But a lot of people don't understand that in leadership. And we talk about it all the time. We want to flip the paradigm of leadership with our players. It's not a pyramid anymore where you get up to the top of the hill. You got all your subordinates underneath you, and you beat your chest, and you tell everybody to come up to see you. What you do is you flip that, and you get broad at the top. You get yourself down at the bottom. And you start to lift people up. You start to push your people up. And that's true leadership. But you don't see that a lot because people believe true leadership is get on top of the pyramid and, you know, I'm king of the hill, you come up and meet me.
I've never heard that, inverting the pyramid. I like that a lot because to put all that weight on your shoulders, it takes a strong person to be the point of that pyramid.
Well, if you're going to call yourself a leader, you know, you got to lead.
And I mentioned laziness too. And I mean, you could also translate that into apathy. Where, I mean, that could translate into all different types of plagues to society right now where people say, oh, I don't want to vote, it doesn't matter. Or, oh, I'd rather not get involved because I don't know. Well, why don't you educate yourself? And in all different forms, not only that, but in self-improvement, like you said, where it is challenging to go out and earn yourself a better job or a better life for your children or your loved ones. And it's sometimes the easier choice to be comfortable, sit in the same course, let things be the way they are, settle in. And how have you tried to deal with natural, I guess, comfort, apathy, laziness, because it tempts all of us?
Well, the biggest thing we try to teach them is being elite is never on sale. Being elite's never 50% off. Being elite's never discounted, you know. And it's like when I passed by a piece of trash when I was little and my dad said, come back here and pick this up. I said, why do I have to pick this up? It's trash and it's not mine. He said, no, you're going to display the ability, not talk about it. You're going to display the ability to do something that 99.9% of other people would have not done. They'd have just passed the trash up. And so the players have a joke every time I see trash, you know, I pick it up. But that's what he taught me. And we want to pride ourselves, I tell the players, into doing the things that other people don't want to do. That's how you become great. And what you got to watch out for being elite is, here's what's wrong today, is most people want to do the easier thing. They want to attach themselves to something that's already elite, but they don't want to be elite themselves personally because that takes work. And so that's why I love the Navy SEALs, because you have to go there and become elite individually, then you'll be attached to an elite group. And you know, the SEALs are one of our most impostered occupations in the world. More people lie about being a SEAL than anything else. And because they do that, people ask, well, why is that? And they say the answer to that is because every time they print the SEALs, usually within another sentence or two, the word elite comes up. And so people genuinely want to attach themselves to something elite. And that's why we have to have so many 6 o'clock in the morning workouts and flip tractor tires and work it really hard in the fall, because I don't know if you're here just to attach yourself to an elite program, or do you want to become elite yourself? And so we need to find that out. And so, but that's the biggest challenge in our own personal lives. You know, our parents walked past our room when we were sleeping. They didn't go to work for themselves. They went to work to protect the people that were in those beds. And when people are lazy, I tell them all the time, you're worried about you. That allows you to be lazy. I got up every morning. When I walked out of my house, I passed 3 rooms, Justin, Austin, and Ashley. I mean, that's who I had to go to work for. And so I wasn't working for me. I was working for my 3 children. And so a lot of times people get caught up in their lives working for themselves. When you're going to work for yourself, you're going to be in trouble. And I think you got to attach yourself to what are you doing. I'm working for the university. I mean, I'm trying to make this the best job I can make it. I'm trying to make it the best program I can make it. I'm trying to make sure I'm serving the university so that I watched Mr. Robert Tronhall pass away. I watched Mr. Sammy Russo pass away. I watched Jerry Rayo pass away. All these men fought to make the university good. They came into my office. They bought wall signs. They donated so I could host a regional. They all believed in the university, you know, and they're gone now. So who's going to carry the torch for them? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I get up every day. I take my job as sacred, man. And I tell players this all the time. If you take what you do here with us sacred, then I don't have to worry about you in the bar. I don't have to worry about you here or there, but you got to take your job sacred, and you also have to work for other people. You're working for the season ticket holders that have donated $1 million, $250,000. You're working for the suite people that are paying X amount of dollars for the suites, or $1,000 for a box seat down the right field line. I mean, you got to understand who you working for every day when you flipping that tractor tire, because if you're just working for yourself, then pretty soon you're going to sit down. You follow me?
Yeah.
And so that's what I find. A lot of people that are lazy, they work for themselves. It's easy to sit down. But when you're working for somebody else, to serve somebody else, to me, you're going to flip that tire one more time.
And that reminds me of something I saw this week, and I'm going to give credit to a young coach in the area, Rob Poole at Lafayette High. He's a brand new coach, just took over their program, and at his practice, he spoke about that directly. And there were 2 players that I won't name, so there were 2 players that had not been showing up to workouts. And he basically said, look, you get those guys here, number 1, and 2, don't be like that. Like, be here, because and the way he told him, he also talked about God and faith. And if you fill your life with the right things and positive things to improve your life, or like he said, instead of going out and drinking or smoking weed at a party, how about you just hang out with your teammates, bond, maybe go bowling or something. Sure. You don't get in trouble. You can still have fun. But basically his philosophy was, if you fill your life with the right things and good things for you and the people in your life, there is no room for the bad elements to creep in. And I just think that's a really good way to teach the young men, especially at the high school level, how to approach things. And I'm guessing that's kind of a sentiment you echo to your guys, too, is that if you fill your life with the right things, there's no room for the bad.
Well, again, we want them to starve. First of all, we want them to recognize what the lie is, okay? And then 2, we want them to starve the bad wolf. And then we want to make sure that they look at their Fab 5 and make sure that the books they read and the people they with, the shows they're watching, the radio station they have on, you know, is hopefully challenging them to feed the good wolf. We tell them this all the time too. The first day they hear me in this series that we do with them, nobody accidentally rolls a joint and smokes it. Nobody accidentally goes into Walmart and have a fifth of whiskey fall off the shelf, the cap break off, and pour down your throat. Those things are choices. Okay, they're choices we make. And so what we want them to understand is that, you know, we want you to understand choices, because the better choice you make, and if you're willing to make a legitimate choice, then it's going to be tough at first, but it's going to lead to long-term happiness, not short-term pleasure like the illegitimate choice. I'm not saying that nobody should drink. I'm not saying, look,
Yeah.
everybody can do what they want to do. That's not the stand that this
Mhm.
when you're interviewing me on, is to judge people.
Of
I do
course.
not judge people, okay? I want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not perfect myself. If I would be perfect, I'd be able to be a judge. The problem is I'm far from perfect. If I'd tell you everything I did right now on the radio station, you'd ask me to leave. But having said that, okay, we want them to try to shorten up their chain, their learning curve. See, if you go with a fish with a master fisherman and you've never fished before, you're going to learn how to be a good fisherman quicker than when you fish with somebody that's never fished before.
Of course.
And so what we want to try to do is God really wants us. That's where we get in trouble in our life. We make a mess of something and then we stay in the mess. God wants you to take your mess and make it your message. He wants you to take your test and make it your testament. He put you through that so that you could help somebody else get out of it. How can somebody else get out of it? How can they trust me if I've been perfect? How can they trust me if I've never had to work? How can they trust me if I've never fallen? Okay? Do you want to go, somebody teach you to scale a mountain that's never fell off a mountain before? I mean, I want somebody.
Yeah, what happens if I fall?
That's exactly. I mean, and so do you want to fly with the pilot that can only fly in good weather? What happens when he hits bad weather? And so the challenge that we try to get them to understand is nothing happens accidentally. Okay? You make those choices. And so we want them to understand that you have to work to make good choices because, like you said earlier, the better choice you make, the more you feed the good wolf. And the more you feed the good wolf, the better off you're going to be. But when you do fall, this is where the devil's very good too, is because once we fall, he starts to come in and get on your shoulder and say, hey, look, now you're done. I mean, you're finished. I mean,
Pack it in.
That's it.
Why don't you just kill that bottle?
Who you gonna lead? I mean, you're done, man. The mistake you made right there. I mean, nobody's gonna follow you. And then he gets us discouraged, and boy, then he sets up camp in our life. And what we've got to remember is that no matter what we did, okay, no matter what we're drowning in, okay, whether it's an addiction, a divorce, debt, no matter what we're drowning in, we got to always remember, man, that our lifeguard once walked on water. And that's what calms me, not the depth, not what I'm drowning in, but to understand that my lifeguard once walked on water, that calms me.
And in your years, what have been the most common issues that you have to face or you encounter when you deal with young men? And have the issues changed, or do they kind of tend to stay the same?
Well, what's changed in my 30 years of coaching is when the recruit came in, he came in with a mother and a father. And you could see discipline. You could see that there was going to be accountability. And then I think what's eroded along the way, I don't think the parents have gotten worse. Some coaches get in trouble because they say the parents are worse now. Some coaches get in trouble because they say the kids are worse now. I think only one thing has changed in my 30 years, but it's been a big change. It's taken a set of lenses off of us and it put another set of lenses on. And we're skewed on what the truth is, and we're skewed on what we glorify. And I think that's what's changed the most, is that so many people are lost in our country because we lack leadership. We don't know what true leadership is, so we don't know who to follow. And I think that's the biggest challenge today in our country. I think that's why you see so much of what we're having right now in the world of the African American and the whites and ISIS and everything else, man. We're just lost, man. We're lost. I mean, at the root of all of this, okay, if we'd have treated people the way they should have been treated, more than 3/4 of this stuff would go away.
Yeah.
But because we treated somebody like they were lower than us because their color of skin or what they drove or the subdivision they live in. And I tell the players this all the time, I want you to learn how to be a 360-degree leader. I want you to serve the person above you, share with the person on the side of you, and lift the person up below you. But here's what gets us in trouble in our country today with pride. We want to bring the person above me down. We want to act like I'm better than the person on the side of me, and then I want to keep the person below me down. That's not servant leadership. Servant leadership says, serve the man above me, share with the person on the side of me, and lift the man up below me. And when you can live that out every day to the best of your ability, I'm telling you, a lot of this trouble will go away.
I hope that message right there gets shared with a lot of people. And the part about this is, you've said it before, being a leader and taking on leadership is not an easy role by any stretch of the means. And you started your coaching career young. Was it hard for you in the beginning of your career to stop really, I guess, trying to be guys' friends and to become their coach and their disciplinarian? Because SEC media days, you had two different coaches defending athletes for things that I just wholeheartedly disagree with. And I feel like it's because coaches have tried to become players' coaches or things like that, where I'll protect the players, and it's become a little bit weird. But for you at the beginning, was it hard to try to stop being guys' friends and to become their coach and their disciplinarian?
Well, I think once I saw the truth, like one time I went into a team meeting before I got here with crutches on, and the team was, oh, coach, what happened? And I said, oh, nothing. I said, my teacher wrote my paper for me in high school. The cops and the DA fixed my DWI for me so I could keep playing. The coach let me back on the team, even though I slapped the teacher because I was a good athlete. So I'm crippled. And then I throw the crutches down out from underneath my shoulders and go, but you chose the wrong place if that's what you're looking for, because I'm not going to cripple you like somebody crippled me. And so I saw at an early age how not to coach. And I truly believe this, that we have to teach them how to use their sport, not let their sport use them. And I do believe some of these kids are not bad kids. I think they're living out who's mentoring them. I think they're living out the leadership model that they're in. Somebody else is carrying guns. Somebody else is thugging it. So that's my mentor. That's my model. And I've said this over and over and over before. Parents that believe that just because I put my kids in sport, they're going to gain character. There's only one way to gain character, man. The coach has to be willing to teach it, and he has to be willing to model it. And our parents today have to be willing to teach it and model it. We can't have two bleachers fighting while the 9-year-old coach pitch teams are playing on the field. That's not modeling what we want them to see. And so that's why leadership is so hard, is because leaders eat last. You have to serve other people, not yourself. You have to be humble to do all of that, okay? And so that's why leadership is so hard, because you're fighting every vice and everything that, society tells me to do is go get me. I've got pride. I ain't serving you. I'm going to get what I want first, and then I'll see if I can help you. Well, that is not true servant leadership. And so we want them to really learn, when they leave here, man, how not to just be a father, but a godly father, and then how not to be just a leader, but a servant leader. And there's only one way to do that, man. You've got to be willing to teach it, model it. And that's the toughest part about being a leader. It's easy to teach it. It's tough to model it. And there's an old saying in leadership: know the way, be willing to go the way, and then ultimately you can show somebody the way. That's what the Lord did. The problem with leadership in our country today is we know the way. We don't want to go the way, but we want to show people the way. And it's like a person that, take a travel agent. You can't take people somewhere where you've never been. Just can't. And so that's what makes leadership ultimately so hard, is that I have to go first, and so that you can follow. But we have a tendency to tell people, you go first. That you can't do that. You can't do it. And so that's why I think leadership is so hard. It's misunderstood in our country. We got 18,000 books in print on leadership today, but we can't find leaders. Why? I think it's confusing. I don't think these young boys know what true leadership is. And so I think you have to stop hollering at them. I hear so many coaches out there when I speak, can't find leaders, can't find leaders. They'll pull their team up. Our leadership sucks. Can't find leaders. This team is sad. They ain't got no leadership. You the leader. You the leader. And so I think it has to be taught, and that's the one thing we changed 5 years ago, is we put in Motivational Mondays where we start to teach them leadership, because I think it's skewed today. I don't think society's teaching them what a true leader is. And so that's why we call it the big lie. That's why we try to get them to understand what the truth is, so that they can leave here and hopefully be good leaders. Because remember this, who you are is who you attract. Thuggies run with thuggies, druggies run with druggies. It's who you are is who you attract. So just look around you. And I tell them all the time that corporate America knows this too. when they hire you and you start to attract 3 of the laziest guys that have been working there, they're going to know that you're lazy because that's who you attract. I've never seen a hard worker run with a lazy guy because 2 things has to happen. The lazy guy doesn't want to run with him because he's got to work harder. The hard guy that runs hard don't want to run with him because he'll have to slow down. So where do they matriculate? Okay? The lazy runs with lazy, and the frontline hard workers run with the hard workers. And so we try to challenge our players all the time is to look inwardly, see who you are, see who you attracting, who you running with, because usually who you running with is who you are.
And last parting shot for this. And again, thank you, Tony, for coming in and speaking your mind so freely like you always do. And I think that part of the issue with this is when people think about defeating their own demons or dealing with their own issues, becoming better or advancing just in their life in different forms, they look at it as trying to climb a mountain in one step, where I will get there immediately. All of a sudden, I'm going to quit drinking tomorrow, just completely. I'll be fine the next day, or tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and that's it. I'm gonna get a new job. I'm just gonna find a new job. And I think the best way to do this and to live through the stuff that we've been talking about over these last couple of days is bit by bit and piece by piece, like you said, pick up the piece of trash that you see. And if everyone did that, boy, it would be great. But it's just the little things you do on a daily basis that grows into the work that you do that becomes the change. And that's why I said people try to climb a mountain in one step, and you just don't do it that way.
Well, we tell the players all the time is to be a true man, you don't pray for an easier load. You pray for broader shoulders. And that's the whole key to this, is that I think, again, society tells us if we do this, then this is going to happen. If we buy this, then our life's going to get better. I mean, I think we got like 100 brands of shampoo now. So if you take this one, this is what's going to happen. If you buy this one, this is what's going to happen. And I think we get too caught up into that. You know, it's like the story we tell the players, the old guy that walked in one day and told Jesus, I can't carry this cross anymore. It's just too big. And so he says, no problem. Go into the warehouse right there and get you a new one. So he goes in, he looks around, and all of them in there are 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 times bigger than his, and goes, I'll see you, I'll keep this one. And but that's what happens sometimes, you know, is we start to look around instead of inwardly. And again, he usually takes us through something. If he takes you through it, he'll take you to it, or takes you to it, he'll take you through it. And usually that's to try to help somebody else. But what do we try to do every day? We try to help ourselves. And I think that's the big key with this. And I think a lot of this, when people try to make change, I tell the players all the time, no matter who you've been, okay, and where you want to go, people fight change all the time. And you have to remember, we can't stay who we are to ultimately become who God intended us to be. Change has to occur, okay? A journey towards something is technically a journey away from something. And that's what you have to be prepared for. Most people want to journey towards something. They know it's going to better them, but they don't want to leave where they've been. And that's the key to this. You have to really unhitch your boat, man. And like I tell our players, you might have to leave those 2 or 3 druggies. I mean, you might have to leave that group, man. If you really want to journey towards something, you know, you're going to have to journey away from something. And a lot of people don't want to do that. It's easier to stay hitched to one side of the lake and then journey to try to get to the other side, you know, but you're never going to get to the other side. You know what I'm saying? You've got to unhitch your boat. And I think that's the biggest challenge is that I tell the players, if you want to make one big improvement in your life to try to change who you are, then just take a chance to sit down, look through the lenses you're looking through, and see what you're glorifying. And when you can change those lenses, you've heard me say this many times in baseball, it is what it is. Nothing's ever good or bad. It's the lenses you look through. And I think that's what's changed the kid I've seen from 30 years till now, is that society has put a different set of lenses on him. And I think what we have to do is we have to change back those lenses to the best of our ability and just get them to look through a different set of lenses. I don't think they're bad today. I just think they're looking through a different set of lenses. Yeah, and in order to change, you got to work for it. And just something for you to leave with here. It makes me think of something my 6th grade English teacher told me. Shout out to Mr. Humphreys. He taught us that you got to walk through the crap to get to the cow. No doubt. And a lot of people are too scared of the smell of manure to go get the milk for the morning. Sure. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Well, me on manure, you know, it's a kid came down from Christmas and his parents, they had a room full of manure and, you know, the little boy jumped right in the middle of it, man, was happy, playing in and everything. And they said, "What are you doing?" "It's nothing but a room full of manure." He says, "No, there's got to be a puppy under here somewhere." So it's how you look at something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's how you look at something, and that's what you have to be careful for today. I think is that we've got some tough set of lenses on that, and we just got to try to change those lenses out. You know, no different from going to the eye doctor. You know, when you go and you get a new set of lenses, you see clearer.
We're trying to find these new lenses, guys, layer by layer. Thank you again for coming in, Tony. We'll probably have to do one more of these, maybe two later.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Coach. Coming up next, a little bit of reflection, a little mic drop. How about that? Welcome back in to the cheap seats here. Final thoughts here on Making a Man, and it's always hard for me to try to wrap my head around the things that Tony and I talk about in these segments, and I just try my best to identify and put my thoughts in a way that you guys will understand too. And this one, for me, the only way that I could identify and try to put it into a frame of reference for myself in a way that I can understand is what Tony said about keeping your circles close and about how hard that can be at times to separate yourself from some people that you've grown close to over the years, but just for different reasons, you can't be around them anymore. And that's what this mic drop is about. Saying goodbye to the people that you have to, even though you don't want to.
I don't write my stuff anymore. I just kick it from my head. You know what I'm saying? I can do that. No disrespect, but that's how I am.
Some friends are forever. The best ones stay around for the rest of your lives. But the sad truth is that there are people in your lives and people that become your friends that you simply outgrow or that end up not being right for you for one reason or another. And it happens all the time to athletes or celebrities. People from their past that were very close to them end up hurting them or ruining their lives because they keep them around bad influences. Or, yeah, you had friends that you had from high school and college, but if all you did was drink with them or smoke with them, then at a certain point, you have to cut those ties. Otherwise, yeah, when you're around them, you're going to want to drink. You're going to want to smoke. You're going to want to act a fool, get any of the things you used to do with your rowdy friends or anything like that. There comes a time in your life where there are people you have to leave behind. And no, it's not easy. When I was in college, I came in with a large group of friends that I had from high school. But as I continued to apply myself and I found the thing that I loved in broadcast, I started to separate from them a little bit because there were a couple of them, not all, a couple of them that were content on doing the same things we did in high school or not growing, finding the next level. And that's why you have to roll with a pack that is headed in the same direction as you. Because if you're trying to keep up with people that are moving at a slower pace than you or aren't headed in the same direction, or even worse, doing things that can harm you, bad influences, people that are going to try to have you stay out till 3 o'clock and take that extra shot, people that are going to try to say, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Smoke this blunt. And it might not be the easiest thing to separate yourself from your friends and say, look, man, I can't hang out with you anymore. But a lot of the time it's the smart choice. So my advice out there would be to you is look around the people close to you. Are they helping you in your life? Are they helping you move forward and toward a goal that you want? Or are they just kind of standing in place and holding you back? Because if the answer is that they're not helping you, then do you really need them along for the ride? And that's your thought for the day. I'm out. Coming up tomorrow. It's a Friday, one day closer to the weekend.